She asked for a break to explore things with a new guy from her office, so I gave her one, permanently. I quit my job, moved cities, and started over. Now she's standing in the rain outside my apartment, and for the first time, I understand what it means to choose yourself. Her name was Chloe. We met during a company retreat in the fall of 2021. I was leading a project workshop. She was the new hire from the marketing team, with a laugh that cut through corporate small talk. For 2 years, we built a life. We got a dog, a rescue terrier named Bo. We spent weekends hiking and talking about buying land upstate one day. I was 33, and for the first time, the future didn't feel like a vague concept. It felt solid, like something I could hold. The first crack appeared subtly. She started talking about Liam, the brilliant new creative director. It was always casual. Liam said this. Liam thinks that. Then one Tuesday, she sat me down. I think we need a break, she said, her voice detached. I need space to figure myself out. When I asked if there was someone else, she looked away. That was all the answer I needed. The silence in our apartment after she left was a physical presence, thick and suffocating. For 3 days, I moved through the rooms like a ghost, Bo trailing at my heels, whining at the door at the exact time Chloe usually came home. The worst part wasn't the anger. It was the phantom limb sensation of a future that had been amputated. I'd catch myself looking at the empty space on the sofa where she'd always sit with her feet tucked under her, or at the calendar where I'd secretly circled a date, the one I was going to use to propose. A week into this new hollow reality, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark, a buddy who still worked at the company. No text, just a single, slightly blurred photo from the company's holiday party. In it, Chloe was tucked under the arm of Liam, the new creative director she couldn't stop talking about. Her head was tilted back, laughing at something he was saying, his hand resting on the small of her back in a way that was anything but professional. The caption from Mark was simple. Looks like someone figured herself out pretty quick, man. Sorry. I stared at the image until the pixels blurred, not with hot, jealous rage, but with a cold, settling finality. This wasn't a break to find herself. It was a trial run with a replacement, and I had failed the audition without even knowing I was in one. The love I felt didn't vanish. It crystallized into something hard and sharp inside my chest. That was the day I stopped being sad and started making plans. Seattle became my sanctuary. The constant drizzle mirrored my mood, but instead of feeling oppressive, it felt like a cleanse. I found a small apartment with a view of a quiet, tree-lined street, not the water. I wasn't ready for that kind of vastness yet. My life became a simple, solitary routine. Work, long walks with Bo through Discovery Park, and learning how to be a person who wasn't defined by us. I blocked Chloe on every platform imaginable. It wasn't out of anger anymore. It was a necessary quarantine for my own sanity. For a few months, it worked. The ghost of her began to fade, replaced by the tangible reality of my new life. Then, the universe, or perhaps just her relentless determination, decided to test my resolve. One Saturday, after a long run, I stopped to catch my breath on a bench in a neighborhood park. The air was crisp, and I was lost in the simple rhythm of my heart slowing down. That's when I heard it, a voice I'd know anywhere, a voice that had once whispered, "I love you," into the shell of my ear. Leo? I turned, and there she was, Chloe, standing 10 feet away, her hands shoved into the pockets of a coat I didn't recognize, her hair a little longer. She looked anxious, hopeful, and utterly out of place in my new world. My stomach plummeted, a cold wave of disbelief washing over me. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a calculated invasion. "Hi," she said, taking a tentative step closer. I heard you lived around here. I just moved a few blocks over for my new job." She offered a small, shaky smile. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" Every cell in my body screamed to run. The sight of her brought back a tidal wave of memories, the good ones, which were somehow more painful than the bad in that moment. I saw the lazy Sunday mornings, the way she'd always steal the last fry from my plate, the sound of her singing off-key in the shower, But then, just as quickly, I saw the blurred photo from Mark, the cold detachment in her eyes when she asked for the break. The two images collided, creating a static hum in my head. I stood up, my body tense. "No, Chloe, we can't." My voice was low, flat, devoid of the emotion that was churning inside me. Her face fell, as if she'd expected a different script, one where her grand gesture of moving to my city would be met with open arms. "But that's exactly why we need to talk, to fix that hurt." I shook my head, the futility of it all crashing down on me. She didn't get it. She probably never would. Some wounds don't need to be reopened and examined. They just need to be left alone to scar over. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the park. I could feel her eyes on my back until I turned the corner, the familiar ache in my chest, a stark reminder that some ghosts are harder to outrun than others. The encounter in the park left me feeling raw and exposed. It was one thing to know she was in the same city. It was another to have her infiltrate the quiet spaces I'd carved out for myself. My sanctuary felt violated. Bo, sensing my tension, would press his wet nose into my hand, as if to remind me I wasn't alone in this new world she was trying to breach. The attempts didn't stop. A week later, a letter arrived in my mailbox, handwritten on stationery I recognized. I didn't open it. I held it over the kitchen trash, watching the flame from my lighter curl the edges of the envelope until it was a blackened crisp. Another time, I found a voicemail from an unknown number. I'd blocked hers, but she'd found a new one. I deleted it after the first second of her voice. My refusal was a fortress I was building brick by brick, and her persistence was only making the walls thicker, higher. The pressure began to seep through other cracks. My friend Jake called again, his tone weary. "Leo, man, she's really not doing well. She's called a few of us crying. She says you won't even look at her. Are you sure this is the way? Maybe one coffee, just so she can say her piece?" I felt a surge of cold anger, not at Chloe, but at the well-meaning people who acted as if my peace was a negotiable commodity for her closure. "Tell me something, Jake," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "If our situations were reversed, if I'd done what she did, would you all be hounding her to have coffee with me? Or would you be telling her what a bullet she dodged?" The silence on the other end of the line was all the answer I needed. I was the villain in her story for refusing to play my part, and I was finally okay with that. The call came on a rainy Tuesday evening, the kind of damp, quiet night that usually felt peaceful. The name on the screen wasn't one I expected to see. Eleanor, Chloe's mom. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but I'd always had a soft spot for her parents. They were good, decent people who had never been anything but kind to me, even when things fell apart. Taking a deep breath, I accepted the call. "Leo, thank you for answering, dear." Eleanor's voice was gentle but strained. "I have Robert here on speaker if that's all right." "Of course. Hello, Robert." A knot tightened in my stomach. This was it. The big plea. "Leo," Robert began, his voice a low, weary rumble. "First, and most importantly, we are calling to apologize for everything." I was stunned into silence. "This wasn't the script," Eleanor continued. "We only recently became aware of the full extent of what's been happening. The move, the persistence. It's unacceptable. We raised her better than that." Robert cleared his throat, and I could almost see him pinching the bridge of his nose, a habit he had when deeply disappointed. "We had a very long conversation with Chloe, a conversation that, frankly, was more suited for a teenager than a woman her age. She's lost, and she's been handling it in entirely the wrong way." The knot in my stomach began to loosen, replaced by a profound, unexpected relief. This wasn't an ambush. It was an acknowledgement. She has promised us, and this is a promise we will ensure she keeps, that she will stop trying to contact you. And she's agreed to seek therapy to work through all of this. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The validation was a balm on a wound I'd stopped acknowledging. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Truly, that means a lot." Before we hung up, I told them how much I had always respected and admired them. It was the truth, and as I set the phone down, I felt the final, fragile thread tethering me to that chapter of my life quietly snap. The fortress around my heart was no longer a defensive structure. It was simply a peaceful, empty castle. The war was over. In the weeks that followed, a profound quiet settled over my life, different from the silence that had haunted me after the breakup. This was a peace that had been earned. The constant, low-grade anxiety of waiting for the next message, the next unexpected appearance, was gone. I could walk through the city without scanning the crowd, could check my mail without a knot in my stomach. The phantom limb had finally stopped aching. I took the advice some commenters had given on my original post. I didn't jump into therapy, but I started talking more openly with the few friends who had proven they had my back, like Mark, who'd sent the photo and never pressured me to be the bigger person. I also took a long, hard look at my own role in the saga. I saw how my secretive drive to create a perfect future had created a vacuum of communication, a space where doubt and other people's opinions could fester. I vowed that in any future relationship, I would build a partnership out in the open, with shared dreams, not surprise presentations. One evening, while scrolling through my phone, I saw a post from Emily, the friend I'd confided in all those months ago. It was a simple quote: "Letting go isn't losing something, it's creating space for something new." She hadn't tagged me, but I knew. It was her way of saying she saw I was finally free. I haven't started dating again. That will come when and if I'm ready. For now, I'm focusing on rebuilding a life where my own well-being is the foundation, not an afterthought. The story with Chloe is closed. Her parents' call was the final, graceful period on a sentence that had been full of chaotic, painful ellipses. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself, and even for the person who hurt you, is to firmly, finally, and without malice, close the door. I've locked it, and I've thrown away the key.